Welcome back to For the Love of Men podcast. My name's Courtney Shand, and I'm hosting with my dear friend, Brianna Mosier.
Hi.
The intention of the show is to bring together men and women to create healthy, polarized relationship dynamics by learning how to honor each other's natural, masculine, and feminine energetic core. We are so excited to bring this topic to you today, and if you are new to our channel, feel free to check us out on YouTube, TikTok, at For the Love of Men podcast, and each of us on social media, at Building Brie, at Courtney_Shand. Feel free to interact with us that way. And please give us a rating if you love the show. We always love getting good feedback, and it does actually help us reach more people. So we are ready to dive in. Brie, I want to introduce you to my new friends.
Yes.
Tell my friends who you are, what you do.
Yeah.
Your amazingness.
Thank you. My work in the world is helping women really embrace their feminine energy to both grow their businesses through deep alignment and intuition and flow, and attract in healthy, empowered masculine partners. And through my practice, my background is psychology and being trained in sex, love, and intimacy. And so we do a lot around sexuality and somatic-based healing to accomplish both those things, to draw in healthy love and to bring more abundance, fulfillment, orgasms, pleasure, all the things into their world. So that's my magic in the world. And my brilliant friend, Courtney.
Thank you.
Your work.
Yes, I am a feminine energy coach and dietitian, trauma-informed dietitian, and I love helping women get into their body, take care of their body in a way that feels sustainable and healthy for them, and intuitive for them. So kind of breaking out of being told what to do and owning what it takes to care for and really love and honor the body and the physiology that you have. Such a gift in the world that helps you feel more sturdy and be seen in the world, not only in the dating space, but also just in life, living a more vibrant life. That is my goal.
Well said.
Thank you.
Genius.
Thank you.
I'm excited about the episode today.
Yes, it's going to be a good one. What are we talking about?
It is going to be a good one. It is going to be a good one. We are talking about narcissism, and we're going to help distinguish between wounded masculine, narcissistic traits, and actual NPD, which are all different things. And I don't know about you. I mean, I know I have a hot button for this, but people throw around this word, oh, my ex is narcissistic, or they're a narcissist. And as someone who has experienced narcissistic abuse, I've shared on the show, and we're going to do our personal stories actually next, so you'll hear more in depth. It's so funny, after 60 episodes, we're finally like, oh yeah, maybe we should tell people
maybe we should introduce ourselves.
Maybe we should be a little more personal, But there's so much information to give you. But part of my story is I was with a narcissist and experienced narcissistic abuse for about 2 years and got myself out of it, and now have healthy, happy love from empowered masculine man and all the things, and it's lovely. It's beyond lovely. But I do get a little, I get a little sensitive when people just throw around the word narcissism, because it holds, to me, after experiencing it, it holds so much weight. And most of my clients come from a background of trauma abuse, usually narcissistic abuse in relationship, and feel kind of similarly. So we want to give some words to that and then help you identify, is what you're experiencing narcissistic abuse? Is this person a narcissist? Beyond romantic connections, this could also be a parent, this can be a boss, this can be a friend, but most often I see it in parent dynamics or romantic dynamics, because there's a level of proximity and emotional closeness where the narcissism becomes more potent and detectable.
Yep.
Yeah.
So good. I remember in the codependency episode, you asked what family dynamics can create codependency, and having a narcissistic parent can definitely tilt you in that direction.
Even the traits I've noticed with my clients, like if their parents, if the family dysfunction, one parent is more on the wounded masculine or narcissistic trait side, it almost primes you to accept and tolerate a partner who is full-blown narcissistic.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Makes total sense. So we are all about awareness in terms of applying what we are talking about to yourself and seeing other people with clarity, not to deep dive all of your wounds, because it's not always you. But when you can see, hey, this is what's happening, you have a little more objectivity of how to handle it and how to approach it with your personal power still intact. And I think that is so important to be able to recognize both when we are in our wounded areas and also seeing other people so that we're not taking it on as our own unnecessarily.
Well said.
Yeah.
And that it makes so much sense to me when I was leaving that dynamic. I would say a big part of what got me out was listening to free podcasts, Instagram posts, anything on social, people describing narcissism. And then when I had knowledge of, oh, that's what that walks and looks like. Oh, that's how I'll feel. Wait, that's what's happening to me. Just as like Courtney was saying, I took the onus off me, because a lot of times with narcissism, they, purposefully program you to think you're the problem and disconnect from yourself and your intuition and just really like worship them and lose a sense of self. So what you're saying is so important, because the codependent in that dynamic often thinks that they're the one that's problematic because of the manipulation happening.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So again, we're always about use your discernment, and we're hoping that this is helpful for clarification so that you can trust yourself. We are all about learning to trust yourself more as you're moving into the dating space and relationships. You still have to have that sense of trust. So let's dive in.
Yeah.
I'm excited. This is 100% your zone of genius, in my opinion. You would be my go-to person if I had someone that was like, hey, I need some more support with this. I'm like, no question. Free.
I get it. It's different when you get it. It's different when I'll just say it's different when you've experienced it. And speak to a mental health professional, therapist, if this is something you're suspecting, get other eyes on it. Beyond just this podcast. I feel like we need to say that disclaimer.
Great point.
Yeah.
Great point. Yes. Coaching is a little different than therapy in this realm. And so both are very helpful, and they can work really well together. Yep.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to explain the scale when we talk about wounded masculine to NPD?
Yeah.
What we mean?
Yeah. So we operate in our paradigm here. We teach from the masculine to the feminine, the wounded ends of the spectrum, and then beyond that is kind of this, there's like normal, healthy, otherwise human people, just masculine and feminine. In the middle, thanks. Thank you. In the middle, there's kind of this wave of just humanness. Masculine and feminine operates differently, just as a human nature. And then there's the wounded ends of that, where you're kind of moving into operating from your wounds. And that is something that we want to be able to identify. And beyond that is going to be deep in the wounds, which would be the narcissistic traits, and then even further, and the codependent traits over here on the wounded feminine side. Beyond that is going to be where we really need some therapeutic help to get back to operating on that spectrum, if at all possible. That would be my suggestion. Does that make sense? I said that.
Yeah. On the extreme ends of wounded masculine, you have NPD, and the extreme end of wounded feminine, you have that like really heavy codependent. But everything in between kind of scales back. You've got traits of each, and then you've got wounded characteristics, and then you've got just humanness.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah. And so when you can identify kind of what we're dealing with, you know how to make an informed decision to protect yourself and also to operate in your integrity and with your power.
So I'm going to share with you 9 characteristics that we look for in the DSM to diagnose someone with NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. And when we say narcissistic traits, everyone has moments of what we would call quote unquote narcissism. It's not just arrogance or being conceited or thinking you're right. That's just really wounded masculine. When I give you these 9 characteristics, I don't want you to diagnose yourself and think, oh my gosh, I've done all of these things and I must be a narcissist. Number 1.
It's easy to do.
Yes.
It can also be very easy to do if you find yourself in the wounded feminine space in the moment.
Yeah, talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
We need to de-shame this first.
Yeah. Because this is my background. That's why she's referring to me, because I was the queen of this. Anytime, it's kind of the second year medical student, there's a running joke that once you become aware of all these disease states, you're like, oh my gosh, I have that.
That's me.
I have that. That's what's wrong with my finger. Oh my gosh, I'm going to cut it off. Like it becomes blown out of proportion. And if you tend towards more codependent tendencies or find yourself in a wounded feminine space energetically, you are probably going to initially turn inward and be like,
it's me.
I've done that. Hi. I must be the narcissist.
I'm the problem. It's me.
Yeah, you become the Taylor Swift song. Like that is exactly what happens. When instead it's about being able to identify, is this something that I see across the spectrum for me, or is this something that I can take the awareness and integrate it and do a little bit better in terms of, does that mean that I need to speak up more? Am I being nitpicky and passive aggressive because I'm not getting my needs met? Or is it because this is something that I need to pay more attention to? Either way, you're going to often as the wounded feminine, you're going to take that information and start auditing yourself and making adjustments naturally. That's kind of your bent, is to self-reflect yourself to death. And that can sometimes get in the way in this dynamic, I think. But we just want to preface that with de-shaming it, that if you're immediately being like, ugh, repulsed by yourself, can you pour some love on those parts of yourself and get curious about maybe what they're needing, what it's informing you of, and how you can move forward with that new information and insight? Do you need some extra layers of support, or is this something that's being brought out because of a dynamic that you're in?
Yeah,
That's
well
what I would say.
said. Well said. And with narcissism, like full-blown NPD, we're talking personality disorder, there is no self-reflecting. That person doesn't at night keep themselves up and go, am I a narcissist? Am I the problem? That breaks the veil of narcissism, because there is a lack of empathy and accountability for your actions. Everything is self-gain. So if you're asking yourself that, which, let's just call this out, if you are in a dynamic where there's narcissistic abuse, it is incredibly common for you to think that you are the narcissist. But the fact that you're feeling guilt and remorse and worried about that tells me that you are not. That something has shifted and you're being groomed to think you're the problem. Narcissists just don't self-reflect. That would break the whole veil of what's happening with NPD. You know, so we
Such
might
a good
have,
distinction.
yeah, and you might have moments. I have moments. I'm sure Courtney has. Everyone has moments of, you know, what you'll notice is some of these traits. But what we look for is this pervasive across time and across all situations? We all have moments where our mood shifts, or we're triggered, or we're in a wounded spot, and not the most proud side of us comes out. That's normal. But is this who you are across the board all of the time? That's what we're looking for to distinguish it.
So good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad we practiced this so
I am
that
too.
people weren't spiraling with, I'm the problem.
Blaring Taylor Swift for the rest of the day.
Literally. She actually, one of her lyrics, it says narcissist in it.
Yeah. I think it's about a mom, though, is what I read.
Is it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Or a parent. It was a parent. Anyways.
She has this line that says, did you hear my covert narcissism disguised as altruism? First of all, take a moment for the lyricist that she is. That's amazing.
That's pretty deep.
Second of all, there is something called an altruistic narcissist. There are many types, which is the type that like pretends that they're this really good person and that's how they project it. You know, they're always talking about, I put all my shopping carts back and I help people with this and I give money and I do that. Like, it's part of the gaslight. All right, I'm getting myself in the weeds. Let's go through the traits.
Helpful. Yep, go for it.
Okay, I just feel like you can't have enough information to be able to acknowledge this.
Yeah.
Like, go to therapy and talk about it with somebody who's trained as well.
Yeah.
Okay, here are the 9 traits that come up in the DSM. There are other people who feel that there are even more traits. In fact, I was listening to I think she's a therapist, talk about how she has 30 traits that she moves through with her clients.
Wow.
But these are the ones that are in the DSM at the minute. And I'm gonna read them to you verbatim. And every resource that we're using in this episode is in the show notes. So we've cited them all and you can dig in there if you want more. So number 1 is a grandiose sense of self-importance. It's somebody who's exaggerating their achievements and talents and expects to be recognized as superior without the counter of those achievements. So it's a sense of superiority all the time. Number 2, preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. This is like what I describe to my clients as, because narcissism does come deep down from a lack of self-worth, it's like they're wanting to put on all these things. What did my realtor say the other day? Lipstick on a stick. We went to a house that had been renovated and she was like, to be honest with you, this house looks like lipstick on a stick. You know, like it's bullshit underneath. Like, you're not gonna want this. This house isn't in integrity. but it looks nice. And so that's what you'll see is like, I'm very rich, I'm wealthy, I'm successful, I'm accomplished. You might see that kind of energy, or the victim mentality proportion of it, which is I should be wealthier, I should be rich, I should be more successful because I think I'm inherently better. So they don't always have the accolades to match, but the entitlement to superiority is still there. Okay. Gosh, I said that was
good.
Well said. That came out of my mouth, and I was like,
that needs to be.
You made that make sense.
Yep. Yep.
Number 3, believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people and institutions. So an example of this that I remember was a lot of bragging about, I'm in a mastermind with all these high profile doctors and lawyers. I'm around all these really important people. Can you believe that I get to talk to the president of the bank? Like continuously piggybacking and trying to, because I'm associated with, I'm up there too. Which is not the same as if you're in a mastermind with really amazing women and you're celebrating it. It's more like, this makes me feel good enough because I'm in this circle, and I want everyone to know I'm in this circle so that they'll think of me how they think of them, kind of thing.
Yeah, different than being at the table with really empowered, incredible people and feeling a sense of like, this is amazing. Awesome. Yeah, I think in my experience, it's like you're equally amazed at their talents and you feel worthy of like, yeah, I've worked really hard to get here and I'm amazed that you are doing what you're doing, and like, wow.
Very well
You're
said.
willing to celebrate other people's success, not just use it as a fanfare or a name drop kind of thing.
Yes, I'm so glad that you said that. I was gonna say one more thing about what you said. Where did it go? It's almost like you're humbled. Gosh, I get to sit at this table.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm in awe of you.
Yeah.
It is there's a sense of humility versus the superiority that they really believe that they're better than everyone. Okay. Let's see. Has a sense of entitlement, which could look like unreasonable expectations of favorable treatment and automatic compliance with their expectations. So again, another story. I have lots of good stories to accompany all these.
But I think that's so helpful to learn.
Right, to have an example.
Yeah.
I remember one time he had come back from a hair appointment and had said to, like, so flustered and put off and angry, and had said, they were 5 minutes late. How dare they waste 5 minutes of my day? I booked this appointment. They should have called me and told me they were going to be 5 minutes late. And this was not a one-time thing where this was everyone was expected, because he would call himself, I'm a high performer. I have, do you see the superior, I'm a high performer. I don't have 5 minutes to waste. This is ridiculous. One time I put the dog bowls back in a different place. They usually went over the cabinet and I put them over the microwave, or maybe in reverse. And he had said to me, I cannot believe I've been walking around looking for these for 5 minutes. I'm a high performer. You're inconveniencing me. How dare you do that? You only think about yourself. Wow. Do you see how it gets but in the moment, as a codependent, you can think that that's, because I had no boundaries, I went, oh my gosh, wow, you do have a lot on your plate,
You're right. I probably should set you up for more of a win. My bad.
And then you zoom out, or you tell safe and trusted people, and they go, I remember my mom being like, oh honey, no, that's not normal. I asked her verbatim, is that normal? And she was like, no, because you'll hear more when we talk about our personal stories, but ended up being this knockdown, drag out, sobbing, leaving whole deal over the bowls.
Oh my.
I know.
Wow. So just really unable to regulate themselves. In minor inconveniences, there's not an ability for them to zoom out and be like, you know what? I'm a big boy or a big girl. I'm an adult and I can handle a little bit of discomfort. And also I think different than valuing your time.
Yes.
Different than valuing your time. You have an exact dollar amount that now that person owes you because your time is so valuable. Is that clarifying? Okay.
Exactly. Yep. And what's helpful to know is what's the empowered healthy equivalent. If that were to happen now, an empowered masculine man would be like, hey, where'd you put the dog bowls? And I'd say, oh, they're over the microwave. And he'd be like, Okay, cool. Do you mind just letting me know next time? Because I feel like I've walked around for a little while trying to find them, and I wish you had just told me.
Yeah.
That would be it.
Yeah. Yeah. Not letting it happen on repeat.
And with narcissism, you have to remember this is a control mechanism. The more times that they can get you to comply to what they want. I mean, this was deep in the abuse, so I was blinded at that point, but it's a slow drip to where you, I need to put down the analogy, the money analogy. That will really help people discern this. Basically, your tolerance for bullshit just increases because your sense of self and boundaries and resilience have been depleted, So you do tolerate things like, I did tolerate that. All right, what's the next one? Oh, interpersonally exploitative. Okay, so they're taking advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends and a habit of manipulative tactics. The sticky part with manipulation that I think everyone needs to remember is no person who's being manipulated knows they're being manipulated because they're being manipulated.
Ooh, well said.
That's where it can get, you're like, oh, are they manipulating me? I don't really know. There's a great website called 26 Signs of Covert Abuse. I think the main link is Confusion to Clarity Now. It's in the show notes. It'll be like the top reference link for you to look at. Covert abuse is so sneaky. Covert means you can't, overt is it's obviously in your face. Covert is like sneaky, manipulative things. On that website, they give you exact phrases and what it's called.
Ooh, that's helpful.
Yes, so like blame shifting, projecting, red herring, all these tactics of manipulation, and then what it looks like. So, gaslighting is one of them, and they'll have in there an example of, I only behaved that way because of how you behaved, which is gaslighting and blame shifting and not taking accountability. But when you are the codependent, you have this opening to believe that everything is your fault.
Yep.
And so that's not, you're like, oh gosh, maybe I did elicit that reaction from them.
Oh yeah, I can see how that would be like primed and ready to go.
Confusing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So look at that website, that will really help. But, the biggest red flag is, are you continually confused in your relationship and unsettled and not sure what you did wrong, but feeling like you're always at fault? Also, that would be a good sign of you're being manipulated. All right, number 7, this is one of the biggest ones, lacks empathy. They're unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others and disinterested in their needs. Yeah, this is when your partner's not attuned to you, they don't really care how you feel. And let me put an asterisk here and say narcissists are like their own little social psychologists, and they're studying people and studying their victim all the time to figure out what makes that person work, to manipulate them, to get what they want for power, control, and gain. And so usually a narcissist is really attracted to a codependent because this person is boundaryless, doesn't speak up for themselves, a people pleaser, low self-worth, and then enter narcissist who's like, great, I would love for you to do everything for me and make me feel good and make me your sense of self-worth. It's like that. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Piece. Here we go.
Perfect dysfunction. And if they learn that you are empathetic, they will play to that. And what I say is like they learn to display empathy that looks like empathy, but it's not real empathy, but you'll think it is. They will act like, in the study of narcissism, we say a lot that the narcissist is the perpetrator and the victim and the hero all at once, depending on what brings them the most leverage. So they might act like the victim to play on your empathy, or they might act empathetic toward you so that they can save you. But again, it's all power and control.
Wow.
This is very insidious dynamics.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, confusing when you're, it's unclear. Like I could see that being a lot of confusion to discern, especially because you're already getting like kind of spun out inside and unclear in your own discernment of like, this doesn't feel right and I don't know why.
That's exactly, if I could put it in a nutshell, that is the exact experience.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't feel right, but I think it should, but it doesn't, and I don't know why.
Yeah, on paper it should. Mm-hmm. Objectively it should. And there's a mismatch. Mm-hmm. Always the red flag to look for.
Yeah, in any dating
dynamic.
Really.
Yep.
you know, if we zoomed out of this super wounded space and just look at your dating, like you could on paper be so aligned, but you don't feel the chemistry, the vibe. That's it. That's it. Like, you get to believe yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
All right, 2 more. By the way, you only have to meet 5 of these criteria to be diagnosed with NPD.
Does a professional have to diagnose someone?
I would say yes, and it's very rare that narcissists get diagnosed because it, like, for them to show up and take that kind of test would require them to have reflection, and so that's why it's really underreported.
Gotcha. Good point.
Which is tough. But we do know that I believe it's 50 to 75%. I'm actually trying to remember the exact stat. It's somewhere in the 60 to 80% mark are male, which is not to shift it onto men, because what we know about NPD is that it's not born, it's learned. And I mean, gosh, Courtney and I have some of the most compassion for the way men are socialized.
Yeah.
You know, we really do. And yeah, I won't get too far in the weeds in that, but so it's hard to tell how many people have NPD because it's very underreported. All right, number 8 is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her. Sorry, I'm laughing. It's like, again, this duplicity of I'm really great, everyone should be envious of me, and then when they see someone who's really more successful than them, then they get envious.
Ooh.
It's always a who's on top conversation.
The wounded masculine lives in a world of hierarchy. Actually, the wounded feminine does too. But this is like a more extreme example of that. Like, there is the healthy interdependent middle ground here of masculine and feminine energy. There isn't a hierarchy. No one's better or worse. And that's the dynamic that plays out in codependent narcissism, is this constant, like, even the wounded spectrum. It's this one up, one down, like, power dynamic is happening. When you're in this healthy space, integrated, empowered energy, you actually see equals. You see other people's power and other people's capabilities as equal to your own. You believe the best in them, and both of you rise together.
Well said.
Just caveat.
It's great to give as much as you can, give the healthy equivalent.
Okay.
We were trying to figure out our dynamic in this episode, because she was like, listen, this is like your experience. I want you to shine on this. And I was like, well, I feel like, you know, what's the role? We were trying to figure out our dynamic as co-hosts. So.
How we wanted to explain this.
Exactly.
Yep.
So anytime you can give the healthy dynamic, that would be...
I'm on it.
Her EM was like, let's do this. Okay, number 9 shows arrogant behaviors and attitudes and scorn for others. I mean, that's what people tend to think of as narcissism. When somebody is very arrogant, my way or the highway, like acts like they know everything. And I think that's where people blindly assign that person's a narcissist without knowing that there's 4 other criteria that must be happening for you to call someone with NPD. And again, it is not, you know, moving with the seasons or the moods. This is pervasive over time. Like I've shared with you, moving the dishes or getting a haircut, like day-to-day basic things that cause severe disruptions and injuries to a relationship. Because there's so much entitlement for the world should revolve around me and everyone needs to do what pleases me. And I will get big and aggressive to make that happen.
Ooh, I think that's such a great point. Yep. The response to when that is not happening, how that is playing out, is often this big energy. It's very rare. The more of the codependent end of the spectrum is like, I'm going to collapse when things don't go my way because I'm just going to shrink and blend in as a sense of safety. And this is like explosive, like just beyond what would be normal. There's no space of like, oh, this is uncomfortable. This is inconvenient. And I trust that I'm resilient enough to regulate myself, see things clearly, turn that front brain back on, and take empowered action. It's not that. It's like
100%.
Flash in the pan, like
0 to 100. And I will say, you know, depending on the person, it can express as, I use the words big and aggressive. It could be that, loud, big, aggressive. It could also be really loud energy of the silent treatment and withholding love. They take up all the oxygen. No one is allowed to be happy around them. Silent treatment, take away love. You're inconveniencing me. Don't look at me. It's these The covert abuse is so painful because you can't always get words for it. And what we know about abuse is that it's the same part of your brain that is registering that pain as if you were to physically break your arm or get punched in the throat or whatever it might be. It reacts, your brain chemistry reacts the same way. But then there's this like added layer of trauma because abuse victims often don't believe themselves because there's no bruises on their arms. And they think, well, it's fine. Like, we're just struggling through normal stuff. Or he says this is normal. Or they get gaslit out of validating themselves. And so emotional abuse and physical abuse, the impact can be very much the same. And sometimes, I'm not going to say it can be worse because who's worse? Who's to say what's worse, you know? But the level of not believing yourself is very... just adds a whole new layer. And people who are experiencing physical abuse also don't believe themselves a lot, even if there's bruises on their skin. You know, maybe that person's an alcoholic or an addict and you blame it on that. And so there are lots of ways that we are gaslit and gaslight ourselves. But I just want to make it an even playing field. Like, you're no less a victim to abuse if you've not been physically touched. It is just as severe, and I will die on that hill.
Wow, yeah. Oh, I feel that. Will you say more about what the silent treatment feels like? Because I just said the codependent tends to shrink. Different. And I want to, will you discern that for people?
When you're in, so that was me. I was the shrinker. I'm in camouflage. You can even see me. I'll paint myself like the kitchen cabinets and stand here. Like, don't look at me, you know? That was because of incredible guilt, remorse, being overly accountable, feeling terrified, shrinking, knowing that I would be met with defensiveness, abuse, being pulled away, and trying to like swallow myself up in the air and just survive. Silent treatment is, I'm gonna let you feel the fact that I'm punishing you.
You're gonna learn your lesson and figure it out yourself. Is that?
This is an act of being a perpetrator. Like, I'm putting this energy on you on purpose. The codependent, is it healthy? This is a survival mechanism. Is gonna retreat inside of herself and try as best she can to not be an inconvenience. So if she's going silent, it's like, I don't want to breathe the wrong way on you because I don't want to get your explosiveness.
Yeah, because it's volatile. It doesn't feel safe here. Yeah, and she's saying she because it's in the wounded feminine spectrum. It doesn't matter gender here. We're just talking energy, right?
Exactly. Yes. Okay. Where do we? So you have to meet 5 of those. How do I want to go into the next piece here? I just want to nod to this as well, that there are different types of narcissists. And not everybody, so with overt narcissism, again, you're getting somebody that's like stereotypically very loud, takes up a lot of space, talks about themselves, takes up the whole conversation. I would notice, you know, when I was in that dynamic, in a moment of I'll say this, invulnerability, the most embarrassing moments for me were being in social situations, particularly with my family, where we'd have a group discussion and he would take up 10 minutes of just talking about what was happening with him and his world and how great he was, or how much of a victim he was, or how much of a hero he was, all 3. And if somebody else were to contribute, he would, again, turn it around and make it about him. And the conversation was always going back onto, let's talk about me. Let's talk about how you all feel about me. Who wants to talk about my achievements or your achievements that I've already achieved? Like, there's always this
one-upmanship.
Yes. So that can be more overt. And more covert is going to be like fragile, silent treatment, manipulating, gaslighting subtly. Even if, you know, I had a mentor who shared with me, her experience was he was very calm, quiet voice, but still extremely manipulative and gaslighty. Like, yeah, you're just really dramatic. I think you need some help. You know? And that can be confusing too when you're expecting abuse or narcissism to be like big, when it's actually like, yeah, you really need some help. Are you okay? Do you need to get on new meds? Like that kind of, yikes. I mean, you've got the altruistic narcissist, which is, like I said, somebody who paints himself as being a do-gooder, and so you don't expect them to be doing anything problematic, and they hide behind it. I donate to charity, I put my shopping carts back, I do all these good things, so nobody will will suspect me or believe this. They're trying to continuously control the narrative about their image so that they can protect from any negative feedback about who they are.
Ooh.
They're not actually giving from a place of care.
Mm-hmm.
They're giving from a place of everyone think good things about me. Yeah. Anyway, I've heard that
Good distinction.
if you're to Google like how many types of narcissists are there, you will get so many, the 5 types, the 9 types, the 30 types, all those things. So there's no limit on what it looks like, and it's still being researched and diagnosed, and it's hard when people aren't often diagnosed.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is this something that people are born with or that is socialized into them? As of now, there's no DNA link. The only data that we have, research-backed data that we have, is that it's learned behavior. And I mean, you could look at it as a coping mechanism. And again, research also shows us that there's usually a stunt in emotional growth with this person, where they did experience trauma or some severe injury and weren't giving the right, adequate coping skills, or maybe they saw this behavior in mom or dad, because like we were saying, it's pretty common if you have a narcissistic parent, you learn that behavior. Depending on the posture of someone's heart, they're either going to behave more like that narcissistic parent, or they're going to have compassion toward the codependent parent and pick up those dynamics.
Yeah, that's such a great way to say that. Yep.
Yeah, it really depends on the person. So it's learned, and then what happens is in emotional moments of conflict or repair, that person is almost stunted and reacting from, one of the theories is the emotional age within which that they were experiencing that trauma. So that's good to know as well. Okay, what else?
Well, I love that you said that, because I do think that the part of when you said the compassion for the narcissistic parent or for the codependent parent, the more wounded feminine partner in that moment will often, I think, not see it that way, because they will apply compassion across the board. Like, oh, you have a really tough childhood. You've mentioned that, or I imagine that you have had a tough childhood, and that causes them to stay to help, because that, part of that can be healthy partnership of like, I know this is an old wound of yours. I trust that you're working on it, if that were the case, and we're moving through it together. That would be kind of like the healthy paradigm that we would want to move into. When one person is not healthy, neither person is really healthy in that dynamic. But
yeah, it's true.
But you can't apply compassion to people that overrides your boundaries. That is not helpful compassion. That is just enabling and putting yourself at unnecessary risk, and is how I teach it.
100%. That was my felt experience too.
Yeah.
When I was deep in this, my therapist said to me, and this was several years ago now, so I've done the work, and like I said, healthy dynamic and all the things, but she said it to me as, it's almost like you learned compassion before you learned boundaries.
That's my clients across the board. That's 1,000%. Yeah.
I was like, she's brilliant, by the way.
Yeah, that's well said.
Yeah, I was just like, gosh, that's so true, because the injuries in the beginning start out small, and then they get gradually bigger, sneakier, and they're kind of nurturing that compassion muscle within you, because they know that's how they get away with the most stuff. So I do find that a lot of the women who have experienced this, not always, but often, are very into personal development, self-accountable, and let me be clear, like successful, intelligent. I have clients who are running multiple 6-figure businesses, okay, who have been in this dynamic and are trying to get out of it. These are not incapable, weak, unintelligent women. When I was in this dynamic, I already had a business. I was making over 6 figures at 22, killing it, fitness competitions. Like, there was no part of me on the outside that didn't look successful or capable, but I wasn't aware that that was coming from a place of low self-worth. And I was continually seeking, I need to compete, I need to make more money, I need to be more successful in order to feel good about me. So in walks this man who is like, oh, I'll make you feel blah, 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 and you're so great, and all these things, the love bomb, which we'll talk about. I mean, it was just a perfect storm. It was just a perfect storm. So if you're identifying with this, I don't want you to think it means anything about you, because these women that I work with, including myself, are intelligent and heart-led and compassionate, and it's easy to go through that dynamic and start to shame those parts of you. But I just want you to know there's another way forward of keeping the compassion and the heart-centeredness with boundaries. The piece missing is self-love and self-honoring, instead of abandonment of this to make sure I'm not abandoned out here. Yeah.
Ooh, so good.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? Because this was a meaty piece. Do we want to have part 2? Do we want to just dive in?
We might need a part 2 on, because we're going to go a lot longer than this otherwise, on the love bomb piece and kind of what plays out in the dynamic, how it starts to slide.
That feels like maybe a good pivot point. So stay tuned for part 2, because this is a lot to digest.
Yes.
And
don't diagnose yourself or your lover yet.
No. Yeah, hold the judgment for right now. We're just giving you some awareness, and it might be a shock to the system. And we are going to talk in the next episode about how this plays out, so that you can start identifying how it looks and feels and walks, as Brie always says. And that might give you some more clarification of how you want to move forward to reach out to get more support, however that looks.
Yes. And I have a free training for you, by the way.
Yeah.
If you want to go deep into, it's called The Magnetism of Narcissists and Codependents. It's on my website, buildingbrie.com. It's like a 90-minute training. It was a live video before, so you'll have to skip through the first couple minutes of me saying, hello, say hi, see Papa. But once you get to the meatiness of it, it's really helpful if you're wondering if this is what's happened to you and having a hard time articulating it. And that website, Confusion to Clarity Now, it's linked in the show notes. I will never forget reading that website and realizing what it was like, this whole epiphany moment, what had happened to me. So check that out as well. And if you want formal support, Courtney or I would be great in helping you in coaching and mentoring and, cleaning up that stuff that's making you feel like this is a dynamic you're available for.
Yeah.
Which isn't putting the fault on you, by the way. It's never.
No. Actually, that's a big part of my work, is taking the fault off of my clients.
Right.
Mine tend to be a little more on the wounded feminine spectrum. So, yeah. Evaluating where to put accountability in a healthy way is kind of what we need to do. So, stay tuned for part 2. If you love the show, give it a rating for us, please. That gives us so much more reach in our message. We want to get this information to people, because we do know healthy relationships matter. They matter on a nervous system level individually, as well as in families and communities. And this has a big reach. So that is our ask. And stay tuned.
And we will see you next week.